In the summer of 1922, a young man named Nick Carraway arrived on Long Island seeking a fresh start. He had come east from the Midwest to learn the bond business, hoping to carve out a future in the glamorous and chaotic decade known as the Jazz Age. Nick rented a modest cottage in West Egg, a community famous for colossal mansions, wild parties, and fortunes so new they still smelled of ambition. Beside Nick's tiny home towered an extravagant mansion owned by a man named Jay Gatsby, a figure wrapped in rumor and curiosity. Marble steps rose to a grand entrance, fountains sparkled under the moonlight, and the manicured lawns seemed endless. But despite the spectacle, Gatsby himself was rarely seen. Across the bay in East Egg lived Nick's cousin Daisy Buchanan and her husband Tom, an imposing and wealthy man with old money arrogance. Their house was elegant and immaculate, a symbol of generations-long privilege. When Nick visited them early that summer, the atmosphere was at once beautiful and strained. Daisy floated from room to room with a kind of restless charm, while Tom moved with the confidence of a man who never feared consequences. During dinner, their friend Jordan Baker, a poised and observant golf champion, hinted that Tom had a mistress in the city, an open secret Daisy seemed to endure silently. Later that night, as Nick returned home, he saw Gatsby for the first time. The mysterious man stood alone on his lawn, staring across the water with an almost reverent longing. His hand reached out toward a distant green light, shining at the end of a dock across the bay, Daisy's dock, though Nick didn't yet know why that mattered. As the warm nights of summer deepened, Gatsby's mansion erupted into life every weekend. Cars roared up the driveway, orchestras played under cascades of electric light, and guests, most of whom had never met their host, drank champagne while trading rumors about the enigmatic millionaire. Some claimed Gatsby was a spy, others insisted he had killed a man, but the truth remained hidden behind his dazzling facade. One day, Nick received a hand-delivered invitation, an unusual courtesy, as most guests simply wandered in uninvited. At the party, he experienced the shimmering chaos of Gatsby's world firsthand. Laughter spilled across terraces, fireworks burst over the pool, and the crowd swayed as if time itself danced with them. Nick eventually met Gatsby, who turned out to be polite, youthful, and far more reserved than it expected. His smile carried a practiced warmth. His voice, as charming as it was, felt deliberate rather than natural. Over the following weeks, Gatsby began spending time with Nick, gradually revealing pieces of his life. He claimed to be the son of wealthy Midwestern parents, an Oxford man, and a decorated war hero. He carried medals and photographs that seemed to support these stories, yet something about the way he spoke suggested he was protecting a deeper truth. Eventually, through Jordan Baker, the real story surfaced. Years earlier, before the war, Gatsby had fallen deeply in love with Daisy. At the time, he had no money, nothing to offer a woman whose world revolved around wealth, status, and comfort. When Gatsby left to fight overseas, Daisy waited for a while, but she eventually married Tom Buchanan, whose fortune and social standing promised stability. Gatsby never recovered from losing her. Every decision he made afterward was aimed at winning her back. The mansion, the extravagant parties, the reinvention of his identity, all of it existed for Daisy. Gatsby asked Nick for a favor, arrange a reunion between him and Daisy. Nick agreed, and one afternoon Daisy arrived at Nick's cottage unaware of the surprise in store. Gatsby appeared moments later, trembling with nervous anticipation. The initial encounter was painfully stiff, but as time passed, their old connection rekindled. Their voices softened, their laughter returned, and soon they were talking as though the years apart had been only days. Afterward, Gatsby brought Daisy to his mansion, proudly showing her every room. He tossed vibrant silk shirts into the air, their colors pooling around Daisy like jewels. She admired the lavish displays, and Gatsby watched her closely, yearning for the validation that all his efforts had finally paid off. But Gatsby wanted more than a renewed romance. He wanted to rewrite the past entirely. He believed Daisy should tell Tom she never loved him, erasing the years of her marriage and returning to the moment they were torn apart. Nick tried to warn him that such a perfect restoration was impossible, but Gatsby clung to the belief that nothing stood between him and the life he envisioned. Tom Buchanan soon grew suspicious of Daisy's behavior. Her voice changed when Gatsby's name was mentioned, and her gaze lingered too long across the bay. Tom, who felt entitled to everything in his orbit, became furious at the idea that an outsider, especially someone from West Egg's newly affluent world, might challenge him. The growing tension reached its peak on the hottest day of the year. Daisy, Tom, Gatsby, Jordan, and Nick gathered at the Buchanan home, the air thick and oppressive. To escape the heat, they decided to go to New York. Tom insisted that Gatsby drive his car, taking Daisy with him, while Tom drove Gatsby's yellow car with Nick and Jordan. In a suite at the Plaza Hotel, the confrontation erupted. Tom pressed Gatsby with questions, determined to expose what he suspected. Gatsby finally declared that Daisy had never loved Tom and always loved him. Daisy faltered under the pressure. She admitted she had loved Gatsby once, but she confessed she loved Tom too. Gatsby's hope, built over countless nights and years of dreaming, began to fracture. Tom, realizing he had won, dismissed Gatsby's threats. He told Gatsby to take Daisy home, certain she would never leave him. On the tense drive back to Long Island, tragedy struck. As Gatsby's yellow car passed through the industrial wasteland known as the Valley of Ashes, it struck and killed Myrtle Wilson, Tom's mistress, who had run into the road thinking the car belonged to Tom. Witnesses saw the vehicle speed away. Gatsby later revealed to Nick that Daisy had been driving, hysterical and unable to avoid Myrtle. Gatsby, however, intended to take responsibility and shield her, refusing to let her face any consequences. Meanwhile, Tom manipulated Myrtle's devastated husband, George Wilson, telling him the yellow car belonged to Gatsby and implying Gatsby had been Myrtle's lover. George, drowning in grief and confusion, accepted Tom's version of events. The next day, Gatsby waited outside the Buchanan home, making sure Tom didn't harm Daisy. Inside, however, Daisy and Tom sat together at their dining table, eating cold chicken and casually planning their future. Their intimacy was built not on love, but on the convenience and power of their shared status. Gatsby's dream crumbled silently. George Wilson, consumed by despair, tracked Gatsby to his mansion. He found Gatsby floating on an inflatable mattress in his pool, the first time Gatsby had used the pool all summer. Without warning, Wilson shot Gatsby before turning the gun on himself. The dreamer who had spent years chasing a shining, impossible vision died alone in the water he had never enjoyed. When Nick attempted to arrange the funeral, he discovered the hollowness of Gatsby's world. Those who had enjoyed his hospitality vanished. The rich, the powerful, the curious, none came. Even Daisy, the center of Gatsby's universe, fled town with Tom without sending a flower or note. Only Gatsby's father arrived, a humble, grieving man proud of what his son had achieved. He showed Nick a childhood schedule Gatsby had written, filled with strict routines and self-improvement goals. It revealed that Gatsby's determination had begun long before Daisy. His capacity for dreaming was in his nature, not merely the result of love. Nick, disillusioned by the carelessness of the Buchanans and the indifference of Gatsby's former guests, decided to leave the East and return to the Midwest. Yet before departing, he stood on Gatsby's empty lawn, staring across the bay at the faint green light that had once symbolized hope. Gatsby had believed so fiercely in the future that he reshaped his entire identity around that belief. But the American dream he chased was elusive, beautiful, yet unreachable.